Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much. I know the break has been a little bit shorter than expected. Still, I hope that you're all engaged and enthusiastic about the next topic I'm going to talk about in the next 45 minutes, which is one that I really love because it's what I've been doing for quite some time. And it's a very interesting one because always the question comes up with regards to human-machine interaction. How empathic can a machine actually be, and what is really necessary in that topic? So I'm very happy that you have all gathered here, and hopefully will discuss this with me a little later after the presentation. And what I'm going to talk to you about is emotion AI, based especially on audio. So actually, the reason why we founded the little company Autism, which is primarily engaged with this type of topic, was far back, usually triggered by Hollywood, because Hollywood sometimes has great things. And we're not talking about the Terminator and fiction there, but the main thing that we were inspired about actually was coming from that guy. I don't know how many people of you recognize this series from the 80s called Knight Rider, but actually, a little clip visualizes quite well, and also sound-wise visualizes quite well, what we were thinking when we saw this.
I'm going to listen to some good music and don't offer any suggestions. I'll choose my own.
As you wish, Mr. Knight. But since you are still recovering from your ordeal and I detect we're in a slightly irritable mood caused by fatigue, may I suggest you put the car in the auto cruise mode for safety's sake?
No, you may not.
Lovely conversation. So you had the actual speech command at the beginning saying, don't do any suggestions. But only by saying don't do any suggestions, of course, the car was not convinced that it shouldn't do any suggestions, quite the contrary. By what he was actually saying, don't offer any suggestions, it was ignored. And the how he was saying, he sensed the driver was having some sort of a fatigue, the driver was irritated, so the more intelligent decision would likely have been to put the car in the autocross mode. Of course, chauvinistic Mr. Knight back then said no to his friendly car KITT, but we always thought, when we were back in academia, damn it, this is actually quite interesting. Can we really sense how people are by how they say things instead of only what? And Hollywood came up later, a couple of years, like 30-something years, with this fictional piece in 2014. I don't know who's seen the movie Her, but the story is about a personal assistant driven by AI who is that good in actually recognizing the personality and the needs of his person that he's serving, that the person really falls in love.
Mr. Theodore Twombly, welcome to the world's first artificially intelligent operating system, OS1. We'd like to ask you a few basic questions before the operating system is initiated. Are you social or antisocial?
I guess I haven't really been social in a while, mostly because...
In your voice, I sense hesitance. Would you agree with that?
Is there something hesitant?
So again, we are having a piece that actually shows or calibrates the machine based on how the person said something. Did he sound hesitant? Hesitance, a typical paralinguistic feature, where basically you see, how confident is somebody speaking? What's the type of personality that's actually transported? Why this is coming predominantly important is one reason. Voice is becoming a game changer, especially in everybody's home. You have got personal assistants, or you have got things that you command by voice, where you search by voice, where you do things by voice. You have other things commanded by voice. And it's increasing heavily because it's becoming a commodity. And basically, audio intelligence in that point of view has a very holistic view. What can you really see? What can you really hear? So if you close your eyes and just listen to the next piece, what do you listen?
To half an hour.
Good day, sir!
Of all the gin joints in all the towns in all the world.
So I've heard a lot of things. Very many information that has actually been delivered to you. You first heard a baby cry. You don't know how old the baby is, but it was crying, one of the things that you noticed. Then you heard a child, a girl, with a Yorkshire accent saying half an hour. So you actually recognized that the girl is not from Germany, very likely, but from Yorkshire. Then you heard an angry man. You sensed that he was angry. Around 50, 60, so you had some sort of an age view. And he said the content, "Good day, sir." You then heard piano music playing, male voice around talking, maybe 40, 50, quite relaxed situation, very pleased and calm. Then at the later one, you heard a female voice, 50 plus. She was laughing and actually having a good time. In the background, you heard the jazz music. So you heard a lot. And this is actually what we've done in order to actually embody and allow emotional I. Sounds and voices in this room, what you hear is actually predominantly what you feel, or basically gives a lot of information about how you feel. So basically, there's a lot of things that you can detect based on audio, reality-wise, 2019. You had the fiction in the 80s, you had the fiction in 2014, but what can we recognize, or where our accuracy is quite high in recognition? We can recognize speaker traits. So you can recognize the gender, is this male or female? You can recognize the nationality, where does somebody come from? Does the person speak with an accent or a dialect? You can even detect some sort of an age group. You can detect the personality. How confident is the person talking? How empathic is the person talking? Is the person extrovert or introvert? Is he talking agreeable or not? There are certain psychological models like the Ocean 5 that you can actually recognize quite well based on the audio talking. You can understand the speaker state. Is this a person who's drunk? Did the alcohol consumption actually be, or was it very high? Is the person sounding sleepy? Or is the cognitive load too high? Is the person stressed? That's what you can sense also from audio. But you can also sense the emotion as such. Is this an angry person? Is the person friendly? Is he sad? Is he relieved? Our technology based on the emotion model appraisal theory from Professor Scherer can detect around 50 states and emotional families, subcategories, so that you can classify quite well how somebody is feeling. And, last but not least, but very obvious, you have got the health from the individual person. You can recognize quite well if somebody is sneezing, coughing, if you have sinusitis, but you can also sense neurodegenerative, neurocognitive, and physical diseases that are coming up based on the audio and based on your behavior that you can also track by audio. I'm coming to that a little later. And what you can also do is something that we've done quite with the slide before. We recognize the audio context. So are there many people in the room? How many people are basically talking? What's the social environment? What are the environmental sounds? Are we somehow in the woods or in the forests outside? Are we around a certain traffic situation? What type of sound events do we have? Do we have a dog barking? Do we have a cat meowing? What's happening here? That's all what we can detect out of audio. And that it's sometimes more important to detect why you're talking to somebody and how, instead of only what, is going to be shown by this lady who's going to teach you how to speak and blend in Vienna and teach you Viennese in below 2 minutes.
Are you visiting the beautiful city of Vienna, but you do not know how to speak German, yet you would like to blend in? Don't you worry, to become a true Viennese, all you need to know is just one word. Oida. Oida, coming from the word alta, meaning the old one, can be used in any sentence, or it can stand on its own. Let's say you wanted to say, I'm hurt. Oida! This is a positive surprise. Oida! This is very boring. Oida. I'm lost. Oida. You can use oida to say, did I forget to turn off the stove? Oida? My team just won. Oida! I had too many schnitzels. Oida. It's really hard for me to make a decision. Oida. What nonsense are you saying? Oida, I really think you're cute. Oida.
So what you've seen here also is in the right bottom corner, arousal and valence, two dimensions that are very often used in emotion recognition. Arousal, how aroused a person is, the degree of it, and the valence, how well something is perceived, whether it's perceived well or not well. And also you saw, if you recognized on the right-hand side, that there's not a classical one category emotion. So this is also depending on the emotional appraisal theory in the development and perception of emotions. It's not always very clear whether you're really angry or whether it's some sort of angriness and frustration or angriness and sadness in combination. This is depending also on how the emotion developed. So the more dimensional model has actually the advantage that you have the possibility to adjust and to make a decision also based on the confidence that the model or the result delivers. So how's this actually working? We have got different type of methods that we use when we're working with an audio signal, depending on the signal that we are presented with and depending on the data as such that we are presented with. So our technology can analyze the interactions or basically the acoustic signal in real time already. We only need about 2 to 3 seconds that can make already the first impression on the result, basically with different type of confidence measures, but still. We can basically, from a single acoustic signal, calculate more than 6,000 data points and characteristics based on the feature extraction toolkit that we've developed. So here we have the possibility to also deploy this very easily on device. And then we are using combinations of deep neural nets in order to classify where we are really with this type of emotions or where we are really with this type of speaker states and traits. I'm going to show you a little later the type of use cases where we actually deployed this technology on. So basically, as I said from the beginning, we are looking at the audio signal as a whole. We are looking, first of all, what are we presented in total? And then we start to separate. We start from a very broad perspective into a very narrow perspective, starting from the acoustic scene, where we basically sense, is there any type of speech? Is there any type of music that we have in the back? What is the sound environment that we have? And then we apply in real time also, based on DNN's speech enhancement technology. That means we enhance signals that we basically need for further analysis, or we denoise other stuff that we basically don't need that is actually hindering. This is just some sort of simple sample now, what our technology does with regards to speech enhancement.
Ideally, I would love to collaborate with all these people in this cool nerd circle. There's tons.
Now, if we only focus on the voice.
Ideally, I would love to collaborate with all these people in this cool nerd circle. There's tons.
The second scene is a little bit more challenging.
Hey guys, my name is Valeria. Right now I'm in Warsaw, and this is one of the most popular places in the city. It is called Plac Konstytucji. As you see right now, there are a lot of cars and traffic is so busy. But anyway, I wish you a nice day.
And now with the speech enhancement.
Hey guys, my name is Valeria. Right now I'm in Warsaw, and it's one of the most popular places in the city. It is called Plac Konstytucji. As you see right now, there are a lot of cars and traffic is so busy. But anyway, I wish you a nice day.
So basically you see that the source separation that we have here can be used in various things to enhance or denoise certain effects that we need in the audio signal for further analysis, to detect certain states, to detect certain traits, to detect also keywords and commands in a much better environment, to detect a different type of influences like music or something to the emotional state or trait that the person has. So what can we actually use here, or what is really applied AI in this situation? We have different type of possibilities where we've had use cases that were already deployed on a mass market scale, and others that are more in the research area. We, for example, have been using this technology for market research, for communication, for transport, especially in cars, for health purposes, for media and entertainment, and for IoT and smart devices. IoT smart devices is an area that, of course, overlaps with the other ones, especially when it comes to health. I'm going to show you a little use case later. So, when we're talking about the acoustic interaction and the applied methodology on a device, we basically apply the very same setting that we had with the analysis of the holistic view of the signal on the device as such. So we have, for example, the acoustic scene setting that can be used very easily in products that you already know. Active noise cancelling as an example that you know in headsets or something in that area. Then we have, for example, the social scene that also can have a certain impact detect. That means if you, for example, think about hearing aids or think about other devices that you know, it's always challenging if you go to a restaurant, so you can denoise and filter based on who you're talking with, how many people there are, and there are different type of application scenarios in that area as well. And then it comes down to the very individual thing, to the very individual as such. How do you feel? What type of personality do you have? What do you actually want to track? We've applied this technology, for example, in a headset in the Jabra Elite 85H that was issued this year, which had an adaptive way of denoising and enhancing. That means by collecting the sound scenes that I've been talking before, actually we were able to adapt automatically to the actual surroundings. So, for example, if you think about standing on in a train station and you're standing there and the train is passing by, it's extremely loud. So there's more to be filtered out. Then you enter the cabin, it's not that loud anymore, so you can pass through more. And if you're at home and you want to listen to music and it's not loud at all, it's a different scenario. So the adaptiveness is one of the things, but the individual adaptiveness then makes it much more smarter. Depending on your own hearing capability and your own well-being, you can basically tell the system, this is something that's being planned and not yet deployed, how well you feel with this type of adaptive interaction from the device. Another possibility would be the use case in the call center area, where you analyze the emotions based on the agent's perception and on the friendliness or anger level of the customer calling. So here you have the possibility to detect in real time the emotions, to actually activate support if your agent needs it, and also monitor whether the agent needs additional help or can be incentivized in a different type of way when he's doing very well in actually converting an angry customer into a very friendly one. We've got one use case where we've, for example, applied this here in Germany with a very popular call center called 11880, with very good use case numbers where we were able to increase the customer satisfaction as well as also the acceptance of the agent of using this type of technology for enhanced performance. And I also have a little video that is actually being shown here, how this works.
Say hello to start.
Hello.
I didn't understand your response.
Allô.
Please say hello to start.
Hello.
I'm sorry, sir. I can't understand you. Could you please repeat your response?
Hello.
I'm still waiting for your response. Please say hello to start.
Hello. Hello. Hola.
Calling iRabbit International Help Desk for assistance.
Hello, sir. Thank you for purchasing the iRabbit, your own personal digital animal. Raj at your service, sir. Before I can help you out, could you please spell your name for me, sir?
T H I E.
Is that an O, sir?
Yes. E R. One more R. Y.
That is not a letter, sir.
It's the letter Y.
Can I just call you Greg, sir?
I'm Thierry. Thierry.
Bien sûr, monsieur. How can I help you today, Mr. Greg?
I tried to start my iRabbit, it doesn't work. I'm very tired and hungry.
Sir, if you're hungry, I can call you back after lunch.
No, wait. I shake the rabbit, it doesn't function.
Sir, please do not shake your iRabbit. Press the tail to start.
I tried, it never works. I hate the rabbit.
Sir, your 1-year limited guarantee doesn't cover chewing or biting the device.
No, I hate the rabbit.
Heating can cause fire in your house, sir.
No, I eat the rabbit.
I understand that you're a non-vegetarian, Mr. Greg, but I would personally advise you to not eat the equipment, sir.
Can I talk to your chef, please?
I'm calling from iRabbit International Help Desk. It's not a restaurant, sir.
No restaurant. I would like to talk to your chief.
We are based in a developed country here. We don't have any chiefs or tribes now.
But I paid a lot of money. It is not cheap.
Exactly, sir. It's a rabbit, not a sheep.
I mean, it is not cheap.
It's a rabbit, not a ship.
It's not cheap.
It does have an electronic chip inside.
Please, focus on my problem.
Don't quite understand you, sir.
Please focus.
I beg your pardon?
Please focus on the rabbit.
I'm sorry, sir. I can't accept that kind of language. Thank you for purchasing the iRabbit, your personal digital animal.
So I think you got the hint. At the beginning, you saw on the left-hand side a classical demonstration of valence and arousal grid. The arousal being the up grid and the valence being the horizontal grid, where you basically saw also the point moving. The point moving also indicated that the emotion was developing from different type of states. And the bigger the point was, actually, it also delivered an information, the confidence level, the less confident the system was in the classification. And the smaller the point was, the more confident the system was in the classification that you were actually on the right area of the grid of arousal and valence in this two-dimensional space. As said before, we have an application where we basically use more than those two dimensions, but those two dimensions are quite well in actually showing or demonstrating how actually the emotion develops and actually involves. The accuracies that we are talking about here are in human level. So basically, the person or the system is having an accuracy between 70 to 80% when it classifies the emotion based on human annotation and data that we've collected with different type of corpora. And there's always the question, well, is this language dependent or not? Because of course, an Italian person might sound completely different than a French person or a person from India. And I always say the core of the emotion technology or emotion recognition is actually not language dependent. Because you can, for example, sense if a dog is barking, whether it's an aggressive bark or not, and it's not a language. And I always bring the example of the Stone Age person, where you basically said, or when you communicated with another Stone Age person, you didn't have a developed language, but you knew quite well whether you should run or whether you can stay by the way the person grunted at you. But of course, it makes a difference if you actually have a language corpus as well and native speakers annotating the data in terms of perception of how the emotions actually are. So you can have higher confidence measures if you include the language as such, but the core technology can even be language independently applied. And this is something that is quite interesting in terms of when you're using different type of applications in that area. Another thing where you can use that quite well is actually market research. So we've made applications where you actually can calculate how sincere an answer is or how interested a person is if you, for example, want to sell or if you want to test in early product tests whether this product is appealing or whether the brand is appealing to you. Because it's really a very big difference if you ask somebody, are you going to buy a car or planning to buy a car in the next 12 months? And the person says, yes. Then you can be quite confident that he will be doing that. But if the person says, yes, or yeah, yes. You basically have completely different answers with completely different meanings that you cannot get from a normal questionnaire. So if you accompany, for example, a normal questionnaire with this type of information or speech feedback, you have the possibility to retrieve much more information and actually minimize your efforts in targeting the wrong person. For example, we have used this type of technology with the GfK, a very huge market research company, and also with Ipsos, who has been using this type of speech feedback also for early product tests and for branding tests, how emotional, sticky a certain person was towards a certain brand. A very vast and big application field for the type of technology is, of course, health AI. So as I said at the beginning, there are a lot of things that you can actually already hear, sometimes conscious, sometimes subconscious, what somebody is transporting with the voice. You can detect anomalies, if you know them, or if you have data from a healthy person and you compare them to when the person is getting sick, you can detect how people pronounce things differently, whether they have discontinuities in the vocals or any type of different settings. You can also recognize, understand, and predict certain type of things, for example, depression or relapses that are coming up in a certain way. You can also enhance or denoise, as I said at the beginning, in certain sounds in connection of how well you feel and how well you don't feel, which, think about workspace or operational space, makes much more individualization possible in that area. You can use it for self-monitoring, or you can use it also, and this is one of the trends in health AI very quickly, audio just one part, but multimodality as the big part for recognizing, diagnosing, and enhancing therapies. When we come to the vocal markers and capabilities, the voice is a vocal marker or biomarker itself. But within the voice, we have different type of markers that we also can have. It's like the rhythm, the way that you speak, how many pauses you're making, what your speaking rate is. If you're thinking about things and you cannot find the type of word, for example, to put in, might be an indicator. Your prosody or the voice quality is a different type of indicator when you actually talk about stability in articulation or the whole articulation muscle or articulation body that you have. So, for example, if you think about how you articulate in the voice, you have so many muscles that are basically enhanced with this. You have the breast muscles, you have your lungs, you have your throat, you have your face muscles, you have your tongue. You have different type of things that can be somehow dysfunctional or somehow indicating that something is not very right with you or getting worse, so that you have a different type of marker at a very early stage where other motorical dysfunctions cannot be recognized that quickly. And also, there are different type of things like, as I said, the cognitive load. You can actually see that or validate it with different type of tests like Stroop tests or dual tasks. You have the emotional states that I've talked about before. You have got articulatory analysis that you actually can see where you actually analyze phonemes or other things in order to predict or in order to understand what's happening if a certain disease is developing. We've used this type of technology also in applications so far. For example, in a project that we had with our one partner called Red Bull, where we were assessing emotions of extreme sport athletes in different type of stages of maturity, meaning whether you had a rookie athlete or a pro athlete and how they actually worked around. The target here was not only to assess this emotional state and compare it with the result of the athlete, but also to provide real emotional feelings in a virtual reality area to the fan, so that the fan or the person who's actually engaging or wants to know how an athlete feels when he's going downhill at very high speed actually really gets the notion and the feeling of the person as such. We've also used this technology in a multimodal way for Parkinson's. Actually, the system can, at the moment, and it's going to get better, in a two-class way, it is in only 15 seconds acoustics, differentiate between a Parkinson and a non-Parkinson patient. The 15 seconds are usually based on the pronunciation of vocals and also on typical tests like saying pataka, which is very hard for somebody who has Parkinson's, that you basically can detect the discontinuities quite early, at a quite early stage. So at the moment we have this type of technology with about a good 90% accuracy, and in this product we've combined it with a UK company called MTech with their analysis on the visual part to enhance therapy for Parkinson patients and to have another tool for diagnosis or enhanced biomarker engagement when we have this type of thing. The glasses are currently in a clinical study, and we hope that we have the first results of the clinical study by the end of this year or Q1 2020. Another application that we have is a funded project for autistic children. Children on the autism spectrum have a problem with their social emotional engagement. So they have a problem with actually detecting emotions and also with showing emotions. And this is another core where we analyze how children are saying something, and with a feedback loop, basically provide them with the feedback, yes, you expressed anger correctly, yes, you detected anger correctly. So this is like a vocabulary that you learn. You learn that Ärger in German is anger in English. So basically you can really learn it like a vocabulary, how anger is perceived and how you have to show anger in order to be detected correctly. We deploy this also in a multisensoric way, together with Fraunhofer, who's responsible for the vision part, on the Pepper robot from SoftBank. Another project we are doing here, or real application of this type of technology in health, is for early detection of burnout and depression, especially in the youth category of 16 to 24, where we are actually aiming to develop a mobile app together with other sensoric partners that will, by self-monitoring, try to actually not only prevent depression, but actually, if you're having it developed already, try to enhance the individual therapy by early interaction possibilities, early influences from the therapists, because the data is going to be back and forward to the therapist and not only a punctual assessment that usually is done in that area. This is also funded by the EU. Another project that is also funded by the German Research Ministry is for anxiety. So here we have, for example, the application, again, that we have emotion recognition, especially for patients with phobia, like arachnophobia or height phobia, where the people are in a virtual reality environment exposed to this type of phobia and have a self-training app at home so that they can basically always train themselves how they feel in the certain situation in order to cope with their anxiety and also in connection with their therapist. And another application, and then I'm almost done with the applications, that is also working already, is an also EU-funded project called Workingage that aims to have emotion or your well-being completely included in your workspace. And not on a general group basis, but on an individual basis. Like how you feel in the workspace depends not only on your situation that you have, but also on your development, your age, and certain health states and traits that you have. So this aims actually to have your perfect adaptive working place, counting on your emotion that you will provide, in that case, acoustically. Also possible is, of course, the one thing that we said at the very beginning, that was actually the core, yeah? Not only having a cool car, but a car that actually makes intelligent decisions or at least suggests them to you, where you can detect sleepiness, where you can detect certain safety issues that you have, certain fatigue or other things in order when you're driving. Or if you think about autonomous driving, if you are a guest and have individualized possibilities here. We've also applied this type of technology with several tier 1 manufacturers already, and also automotive manufacturers here in Germany, where they have applied this type of technologies, not in series now, but in a very high-end test phase. Last but not least, media and entertainment. What can you do with emotion AI here? You can do a lot. Besides that you have emotional-based advertising, the more interesting part is games. If you're thinking about emotions being included in a game, you have the possibility to have completely new settings. For example, think about a role-play game where you're having certain possibilities because you've gained some weapons or you've gained some strength or you've gained some experiences. But the last kick is really on how you behave in a fight. Not only what type of weapons you have, but how you feel in a fight, how secure you step up in the fight, or what you do. We have actually initiated a games challenge this year with independent game developers using our Unity plugin for emotion detection that actually had very interesting ideas how they applied it. For example, one game developer had applied it in a game where you had to make jinxes and different type of potions based on how you phrased the jinx. And if you phrased it very angry, for example, the potion was having a different type of composition than if you phrased it friendly or a different type of impact. So you have a completely new asset to a game that makes it not that predictable anymore. For everybody who's liking role-play games or something, this is a very nice challenge, for example. Or, and now coming back to the more serious part, if you're detecting emotions like arousal or valence again, think about children. children tend to really engage in games and tend to be very, very aroused sometimes too aroused, and screaming at each other or screaming somehow that the tension is very high. This type of arousal you can detect, and if you actually have this type of arousal being detected automatically during the gameplay, you have the possibility to either A, shut the game down, which is quite frustrating, or B, if you're doing it intelligently, decrease the challenge that the child is now facing at the moment. So you have a security plugin or a possibility that you can actually have in that area. There's always the question, if you apply this type of technology, how much AI empathy is actually needed? Do we really want that the machines detect our emotions and act upon them? This is a very hard question to completely answer, so I just put down 4 things that are basically inherent when we're talking about this type of technology being applied. Firstly, it's always a situation. Sometimes you need it, sometimes you don't need it, sometimes you need it on a different type of degree, which is based on your individual impact or how you want to engage with this type of technology. It also is dynamic, so it's like an emotion itself, not something very steady, but something that is evolving all the time, depending on your situation, depending on your individual needs, and depending also on your experience that you had with any type of technology or with the situation up front. And this is something that is a very personal question, and it cannot be answered as a whole. So if you are using this type of technology, for example, for a product or in any type of application, you always have to make it as individual as possible and as secure as possible for the certain individual to basically utilize it. So from our end, we focus very much on explainable AI and, of course, on data. So when we basically work with this type of technology, we always have a very high-end qualitative annotation and data process where we use a stock of well-trained annotators, psychologists, communication scientists, sociologists that basically are classifying or annotating or labeling the data. So we have a very, very well predictive model based on that. What we also have is, of course, the possibility that we deploy our technology on a device. This is something that we very much strive for. We are not liking too much personal or sensitive information, if you think about the health information, being deployed in a cloud, because we think that everybody should be owner of their own data or using the own data to the extent the person really feels comfortable with. So it's humanity that we really talk about with AI, if you're thinking about that. And we don't want that this type of technology is deployed for everybody to an extent the person is not feeling well with it. So what we have with this on-device deployment is the possibility that we A, calculate directly on the device, or do not even store but analyze in real time and only extract the fingerprints that are later on analyzed. And this is a very big trend or a very big issue for us as when we're basically talking about the products that we are deploying in this type of area. And what we also want to do is that the systems, when we're talking about this type of models, are adaptive. That means we have got supervised learning and feedback loops included so that you can really individualize the main model that we've been training on your personal device, or basically utilize it to your own well-being or your own feeling. So it's an optimized usage that we would like to talk about, or that we would like to deploy with this. Just shortly, where we come from is the Technical University of Munich. We have actually had about 20 years of scientific background before we founded the company, where we headed up the machine intelligence and signal processing group, this little nice overlapping thing between electrical engineering and informatics, yeah, just like this little thing. And founded the company for the purpose of really having applied AI of what we were scientifically researching before. And I tell you, it's a big gap between ground research in that area, where you just have a proof of concept that actually works, and mass deployment on a product where you have to have certain confidence levels and accuracies that actually detect what you need there. If you have been stumbling in emotion AI or in emotional speech analysis, you've certainly been stumbling about one thing, an open source software, a feature extractor that is quite popular, that's also now from us, but actually was originated at the Technological University of Munich. It's OpenSmile. In the early version, of course, it is free to use. If you want to use it commercially in the product, you might contact me. So we have actually this type of technology for trial also outside so that people can engage of how we work or what our main core interest is in that area. We also have been very heavily supported by the EU, but also by the German government, and also the technology was recognized very well at certain times, and it has not, especially in the medical area, it still has some necessities that we actually fulfill in order to have higher confidence levels and higher accuracies, but for commercial usage, it's actually quite applicable at the moment already. And it's a very intriguous field where we think it's not only the question whether you really need empathy with machines, but how empathic the machine at the end is going to be directly for you or in the interaction with you. And having said that, I thank you very much for listening to me. And if you have any type of questions, please feel free.